You're tuning in to Financial Fitness Northwest live on 1150 KKNW. We provide our listeners with information from business professionals to bring solutions to your daily life and local charities to provide you with the opportunities to give back to your community as well. And today we have in studio Nick Baumgartner. And Nick is the Youth Engagement Specialist at Northwest Adoption Exchange. In his role, Nick partners directly with older youth in foster care to involve them in telling their stories and creating content to share with potential adoptive families. Through a variety of storytelling mediums, from video to photography and writing and more, Nick works to create a platform for youth so that they can have the leading voice in finding their own adoptive family. Oh, Nick, we're so excited to have you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know. Welcome, Nick.
Yes. So tell us, how is Northwest Adoption Exchange helping our community? And just, give us an overview of what it is, what you guys do.
Yeah, so Northwest Adoption Exchange is helping find adoptive families for kids who are in foster care. These are kids who are anywhere from 1-year-old to 17 years old or close to 18 years old, kids who are currently in foster care here in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, all mostly my kind of context. I'll talk about Washington being based here, and most of the work that I do is here in Washington. But so kids in foster care who need an adoptive family, we are there to help get the word out on their behalf, help share their stories, help connect families who are looking to adopt, who might be interested in adoption, with these kids who need an adoptive family.
Wow, that's so great. So what do you personally do there?
Yeah, so my role within that context is to kind of uniquely work with the older youth who are in foster care. So you have that big age range, and kids in that age range have different needs, have different desires. Older youth have this incredible desire, as any teenager does, to express themselves, as to kind of be their own owner of their future in a lot of ways. And so my role is to collaborate with these kids who are older and in foster care who want to be adopted, and give them, like you said, a platform that they can share their own story. They can share what they want to tell potential families, what's important to them, what they're hopeful about for their future, and really be the storytellers rather than us tell people, hey, this teenager needs to be adopted. We want to give that power to the teenager and say, here's your opportunity. Tell some of your story, because that's what people really do connect with. And so teenagers have that ability.
I think that's awesome.
Wow. I think
so. What I don't know if you said this. What's the age range then? Is it
with my role?
Yeah.
About 13 to 17, kind of those teenage years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are these are these kids that have been in foster care their whole lives, or some have only been in foster care recently? Is it just any kid in foster care that you're working with?
Yeah, so great question. And kids come into foster care at any age. Some kids come into foster care at a young age and are in foster care for a long time and get shipped around placements, and it really takes a toll on them. Some kids come into foster care when they're a teenager. I mean, there's really no specific way. It really is an individual situation for each kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do the older kids that are just coming into foster care, because you said kids that want to be adopted, do some kids not want to be adopted?
Good question. There are some kids that maybe they're old enough to desire kind of long-term foster care and feel a desire to age out. Most kids that we work with who are in foster care do want to be adopted. And, with any kid who's experienced such trauma and such loss of birth family or their parents or relatives, there are plenty of fears and trepidations in that in any scenario. But most kids do want to be adopted. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so amazed by the teenagers I work with. It takes such courage to share your story and to be vulnerable and open and say, hey, I want an adoptive family. This is what I'm looking for. This is what's important to me. So to put yourself out there. It's a daunting task, and I'm always blown away by the courage of these teenagers.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't think I could do it.
I
would
know.
just cry.
I know. That would be hard. So is there a really big need? I mean, is the need being filled, or is it way outbalanced, too many kids, not enough people?
Yeah, good question. So, within any discussion around what our organization does or what I do, there is always context to provide about kind of the context of foster care here in the state and nationally too. And the truth is, this word crisis is thrown out, a placement crisis, a foster care crisis in the state. If you kind of read through some of the local outlets in any state, but particularly in ours, that there is this crisis of a shortage of families who are coming forward as potential foster or adoptive families, even to say, hey, we want to take kids into our home and be that permanent placement for them or temporary placement to provide some stability. And at the same time, there's an increase of kids coming into foster care. So you kind of have these 2 points on a graph that in an ideal world and as a community, we want to see those points get closer together where there's less kids, more families, and so there are more opportunities for kids to find permanency. But at this point, there are more kids coming into care and less families coming forward. And so there is kind of this big gap that we are trying to bridge, need to bridge.
Wow.
Are the foster kids usually is there certain foster parents that have teenagers, or are they could they be in a home with other younger foster kids? I mean, I don't know. How do they get, I guess I'm just wondering, do they just get placed like any of the other younger kids?
Yeah, there's details that are unique to every situation, but across the board, kids who are in foster care need a home, and with a shortage of residential foster homes, for lack of a better word, sometimes kids are placed in group homes with multiple other foster kids, not because they need that level of supervision, but because sometimes there's no other options available. Sometimes kids are placed out of state because there's no options for them in state. So in an ideal world, there would be, at the very least, foster homes that meet these kids' needs available to them. But in the in such a crisis, in such a shortage, the state, the care that these kids are under, they have state social workers and are in foster care in the state, look for kind of any option available sometimes.
Wow.
It's like heartbreaking. What are some of the common myths that folks have about adopting from foster care?
Yeah, one of them is certainly that there is something wrong with kids in foster care, that kids come into foster care because of something they did or something that happened. And that is just so far from the truth, is that kids come into foster care because of a family situation where they can't be with their parents anymore. And especially kids in foster care that need an adoptive family that is outside of their kind of relative net. These are kids that don't have any relative options and really need a family, because that sort of family safety net that maybe you and I are so familiar with, or at least personally that I had growing up, that's just not there, and that allows for security and stability that these kids might not have. So certainly kids do not come into foster care because of any fault of their own. So that's probably the biggest myth that we try to dispel.
Yeah,
that is really good to let people know.
I know,
because it doesn't. I think there's probably somewhat of a stigma that people think maybe, it's challenged kids or troubled kids, and it's going to take a special person to do that. But maybe it's like you're saying, it's just a kid that needs a loving home.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we've had other charities and nonprofits on here regarding foster care. And I mean, part of the problem, too, is there's just not even enough foster care, like families that provide foster care to children, right? That's like a huge issue right now.
Yeah.
Why do you think there are so many more kids that need foster care or adoption than there was previously? Do you know? What's causing the crisis?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that I'm not as versed in necessarily.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. I don't want to spout off some theory that doesn't have any backing. We really deal with the crisis. I'm going to sort of dance around your question with my answer. We sort of really deal with the crisis sort of at the point of where kids need those homes. So, I couldn't give you all the theories and there's a multitude of reasons why that might be happening.
Yeah.
But certainly we kind of stay focused on, okay, these kids are in care. Where can we find them a family?
Right.
So I think that you sent us maybe a little clip.
Yeah. I'm so excited about this.
With this, do you need to do a little introduction? Or?
Sure. So, in my work with teenagers, we help teenagers create what's called in-depth profiles. So it's kind of it's a website where their content that they help create can live and be shared with families. And so what we're going to hear is just a little splice of some audio from a video that a 16-year-old boy who I got to work with recently just wanted to share with families about himself, what he wanted to put out there to help families get to know him a little bit and sort of express what he's hopeful for and kind of who he is.
Awesome.
All right.
I put myself into the foster care system at the age of 12. The reason that drove me to do that was because of basketball, because I really wanted to make something out of it and be in a situation where I could just chase my dream. I want to be adopted and get out of the foster care system before I'm 18. To me, family is everything, and I know that family there's not going to be a family that's perfect. I believe the only thing that matters is that they love you conditionally and unconditionally.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, just like the courage and authenticity and vulnerability that is kind of wound up in these stories, and that's just a snapshot. And really the cool thing with these, we call them these in-depth profiles that teenagers help create, is that it's really all about them. I'm there as kind of their sidekick. I meet with these kids in person all over the state, one-on-one, and we just kind of start with two questions, which is, what do you want to share with potential families, and how do you want to share it? So, with him, it was a video where he kind of spoke directly to families out there. With other teenagers, it's helping capture some of their interests or their passions, writing and music, in a variety of different ways, through podcasts, through artwork, however they kind of want to own that piece and express themselves.
Please
Wow.
tell me he found a home.
We are in the process right now of sharing his content and finding potential families, and it's so it's an in process thing. Some of these projects, which is hard to see, just take a long time. To sharing content to kids finding a family does take a long process sometimes, and we're not involved in the matching side of things of families and kids picking each other. But certainly we're sort of at this entrance to the door of bringing families in and
Right.
helping create those potential options for kids.
And so he mentioned at the beginning that he put himself in foster care. You can actually put yourself in. He took himself out of a bad situation and he enrolled himself in foster care.
Yeah, I don't know all of his details.
Okay.
It's and certainly for more personal things with kids, it's totally
Yeah.
at their liberty to what they want to share. There's no expectation to share
Right.
any background or anything like that. But yeah, in his situation, that was kind of him identifying what his needs were, and which is heartbreaking,
It's
right?
so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
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 It's so heartbreaking. So I can imagine that it's harder for these older kids to get adopted, right? Do a lot of them age out?
Yeah, and so hence kind of the reason for Northwest Adoption Exchange creating this position that I filled and have worked in for about a year now, is teenagers need kind of this additional level of help, of recruitment to find those potential families. And so, one of the sort of difficulties that we encounter sometimes is families are focused on adopting younger kids and kind of have a vision for,
Right.
maybe starting a family with a kid who's a younger age, and which kind of leaves teenagers maybe, combining it with some of the myths about kids that older teens are still in the system and they've done something wrong, which is totally not true. And so fighting against some of those myths too is, and sort of allowing teenagers to use their unique position to be their own storytellers and their own advocates. We really feel like giving them this added, kind of level of service and helping them sort of be much more involved is key to helping them kind of uniquely find adoptive families.
Wow.
That's awesome. So, Nick, tell us what you've learned from working with the older youth in foster care.
Oh man,
Sure, a million things,
yeah,
right?
my gosh, it's so hard to pick some things because every teenager is so unique. But I think I am just continually astonished by kids or teenagers' ability to articulate their passions and their visions and their hopes for the future, and their courage in the face of a lot of adversity and trauma they've experienced. Their desire to and hope that they hold on to find a potential family, and their willingness to be a part of that and to be vulnerable and to be creative and express themselves. It's inspiring. Like I think the cliche is that you would wake up every day and love what you get to do in your job. And for me to be able to work one-on-one with these kids regularly and to just sort of be there to help empower them to be their own advocates, it's incredible.
Wow. What do you have? Well, do you have any like little stories to share with us? Or
Yeah,
like a success story.
yeah,
Do you have-
recently,
Yeah, something good.
yeah, recently, I know it's, we're always
It-
after success stories because we want these kids to be successful.
we want
and,
them to, yeah.
So, recently there was a 15-year-old boy that we worked with, and I got to spend some time with him in person, and we created a video together, and it sort of became this sort of top 10 list about this kid, top 10 things he loves, wants to share with families. He's into Rubik's Cubes and basketball and wants to be a video game design artist when he's older. And so we helped kind of create this great video that he was totally in charge of. And we recently heard that he's been kind of placed initially with a family and has been doing weekend visits, and it's going really well. And they kind of found their way to him by seeing the content that he helped create. And so we're able to create that connection with him based on what he made. And we got a little anecdote from his social worker who said that the two of them were talking about his experience working on his video and being involved. And he said something to the effect of, I just decided to kind of agree to do a project like that and put myself out there in the universe, and the universe turned around and gave me exactly what I wanted. And, that's what we are
That's
striving for
yeah.
these kids.
That's perfect. Well, thank you for that happy story that I'm trying not to cry. But thank you so much for coming in, Nick, and sharing that with us. That's just really great information. If you guys want to find out more about what they're doing there, you can check it out online. We'll have this segment posted and contact information on our website at www.financialfitnessnorthwest.com. And when we come back from the break, we're going to be talking about the Fed's rate increase. So tune in for the Riley Johnson Team Market Update when we come back.